Hello, and thanks for joining us for today's video. To start off, we want to give you an update about the latest videos on our other channel, Paranormally Listed. One of our videos is about killers who were haunted by their victims. In that video, we cover one of the most infamous crimes in modern English history. In another video, we look at 3 doomsday scenarios. This includes one about tiny tapeworms that will make us lazy. Finally, we have a video about the mysterious Winchester Mansion in San Jose, California. You'll be able to find a link to those videos at the end of this video. Just before we start today's video, we want to say a big thank you to Coinsplash for sponsoring this video. Has it ever been your dream to build an empire of coins? Then Coinsplash, which is free to download, is a game you'll absolutely love. In the game, you become a powerful coin mogul and transform your village into an empire. You gain coins from looting other villages and spinning wheels. So spin to win, hack and attack. Download to build your coin empire now. Did I mention it's free to download? Coinsplash is a casual but challenging game, and each level is more fun than the last. I love playing at the end of the day when I'm watching TV. It's a nice way to unwind at the end of the day. One of my favorite parts of the game is spinning the wheel and getting a ton of coins. Also, in the game, you can attack people and people can attack you. I absolutely love getting revenge on players who have attacked me. It's so satisfying to strike back at them. Are you up for the challenge? Download Coinsplash for free by clicking on the link below my video, and you'll get 1 million free coins and 60 spins once you finish the tutorial. So please click on the link and download Coinsplash for free, and you'll be supporting Criminally Listed in the process. Number 3. Wayne Boden. In the summer of 1968, 21-year-old Norma Villancourt was a teacher. She lived in an apartment in Montreal, Quebec. On July 23, 1968, she was found strangled to death in her apartment. She had also been raped. There were bite marks on her breast. What was odd about her murder was that there were no signs of a struggle. The medical examiner noted she had a faint smile on her face. Julia Dead, 20, was at home in her Montreal apartment on October 3, 1969. Her boyfriend was working the night shift. Odette was nervous about being home alone. On the phone that night, Odette told her boyfriend that she was scared, but she did not elaborate. Hours after the phone call, Shirley Odette's dead body was found in an alley behind her apartment building. She was fully dressed, but she had been raped. There were bite marks on her breasts. She had also been strangled to death. What the investigators thought was odd was that she didn't have any blood under her fingernails. So they thought she may have known her killer and didn't fight back. About a month later, 20-year-old Mary Archibald met a man, Bill, at a nightclub. The two started dating. On November 23, 1969, Bill showed up at the jewelry store where she worked as a clerk. The pair left together for the evening. The next day, Archibald didn't show up for work. Archibald's boss checked on her to see if she was sick. When she did not answer, her employer got help from the landlady. They entered Archibald's apartment and found her dead body on the couch. She was partially dressed in her pants and shirt, but her bra and pantyhose had been ripped. Like the other 2 victims, Archibald had been raped, her breasts had been bitten, and she was strangled to death. In her case, though, she had fought back against her attacker. A crumpled photo of a man had been found at the crime scene. The police showed it to Archibald's friends. They said that was Bill in the photograph. 24-year-old Jean Way worked as a secretary for a brokerage firm in downtown Montreal. On January 16, 1970, Way's roommate called her at home at around 7 p.m. Way told her that she was hanging out with a man named Bill. Her roommate asked who Bill was, but she did not get much information for the conversation. The following night, Wei had plans to go on a date with her boyfriend. When he arrived to pick her up, Wei did not answer the door. Her boyfriend left and had some beers at a pub down the street. He decided to call her when he was heading back. Wei did not pick up the phone when he called. At around 9:30 p.m., he went back to the apartment. This time, he found Wei's door unlocked. He went inside and found Wei's naked dead body. Her breasts had not been bitten. She had been strangled to death with a belt. The police believed that the killer was in the apartment when Wei's boyfriend first appeared. During the autopsy, the medical examiner found tiny fibers under the fingernails. With 4 women murdered in 2.5 years, the people of Montreal were on edge. But then, the murders suddenly stopped. Calgary, Alberta is over 2,200 miles from Montreal. In the spring of 1971, a year after the last murder in Montreal, the police of Calgary were called to an apartment. On May 17, 1971, the body of 33-year-old high school teacher Elizabeth Porteous had been found on her bedroom floor. Her co-workers became concerned when she didn't show up for work. They asked her apartment manager to check on her, and she found her dead body. Porteous had been raped and strangled, and there were bite marks on her breasts. Close to the body was a broken cufflink. At the time of the murder, Porteous was dating a man named Bill. The last time she was seen alive, she was getting into a blue Mercedes-Benz that Bill was driving. The day after the body was found, a police officer noticed a man standing at a blue Mercedes-Benz near the crime scene. He was identified as 26-year-old Wayne Clifford Boden. Not a lot about Boden's early life is known. He was born in 1948 in Dundas, Ontario. He was a quiet kid. He was muscular and played football in high school. After high school, Boden worked as a fashion model. Boden was brought into the police station for questioning. He admitted to seeing Porteous on the night she was killed. He also said that the cufflink belonged to him. Boden told the police he had moved to Calgary from Montreal about a year earlier. The Calgary police contacted the Montreal police and learned there was a series of unsolved murders in Montreal that were very similar to Porteous' murder. A man named Bill, whom they never identified, was a person of interest in at least 2 of the murders. The police have a photograph of Bill that they found in Marielle Archibald's apartment. The police in Calgary confirmed that the man in the photo was Wayne Boden. The Calgary police called in an orthodontist who took an imprint of Boden's teeth. He confirmed 29 points of similarity between the bite marks on Porteous' breasts and Boden's teeth. Boden was then sent back to Montreal. He confessed to 3 of the 4 murders. He adamantly denied killing Norma Vaillancourt, who was the first alleged victim. In February 1972, Boden was convicted of murdering Elizabeth Porteous of Calgary. He was given a life sentence. In April 1972, he pleaded guilty to murdering Shirley Audet, Marielle Archibald, and Jean Way in Montreal. He was given 3 life sentences. For years, Wayne Boden remained the prime suspect in the murder of Norma Vaillancourt. Then, in December 1993, 25 years after the murder, a 52-year-old man named Raven Suave called the police. He admitted he was the one who killed Vaillancourt. He said the guilt had been eating away at him and he needed to confess. In January 1994, Raven Suave pleaded guilty to the murder. He was sentenced to 10 years of prison. Wayne Clifford Boden, who was nicknamed the Vampire Killer, died of skin cancer in prison on March 27, 2006, at the age of 58. Number 2. Russell Maurice Johnson. On December 30th, 1974, 32-year-old Diane Beats of Guelph, Ontario, got engaged to her boyfriend. That night, her fiancé spent the night at her apartment. He left for work the next morning. He returned that evening to pick up Beats for a New Year's Eve party. He found the apartment trashed. In the bedroom, he found Beats' dead body. She had been bound with pantyhose. A bra was wrapped around her neck. The medical examiner determined that Beats had been strangled to death and then raped. London, Ontario is about 75 miles southwest of Guelph. They are connected by Highway 401. Southwest of London on the 401 is Detroit, Michigan, and east of Guelph is Toronto, Ontario. 23-year-old Luella Jeannie George lived on the top floor of a 4-story apartment building in London. She worked as a cashier at one of the city's hospitals. On April 15, 1977, she was found strangled to death in her apartment. Some of her jewelry and underwear were found in the trash outside her building. 22-year-old Donna Veldboom worked at a gas station near her apartment building in London. On July 16, 1977, she didn't show up for work. A co-worker called the police. They got inside Veldboom's apartment and found her nude dead body. She had been strangled, and her chest had also been cut open with a knife. Veldboom lived less than a mile from where Luella George lived, so the police thought that the same man had committed the murders. They also thought he had killed Donna Beats in Guelph. All 3 women had been strangled to death, plus they lived alone in an apartment. There were no signs of break-in at any of the crime scenes, so the police believed that the killer scaled the buildings and entered through an unlocked balcony door. So they believed that he was strong. Besides the 3 murders, several other women who lived alone in apartments reported being attacked. They were sexually assaulted and strangled. The police believed that the killer thought he had killed them and then left the apartment. The problem was that the police didn't have a suspect, so they decided to look at the tenants of the building. One man, 30-year-old Russell Maurice Johnson, caught their attention. Johnson worked as an automotive store clerk at nearby Ford plant. He was also a weightlifter, so he was strong. In 1969, he had admitted himself to the London Psychiatric Hospital. He was diagnosed as a sexual deviant. The police also found connections between Johnson and the other 2 murder victims. He had lived in the same building as Luella George. Johnson had also lived in Guelph as a teenager and attended high school there. On the morning of Diane Beats' murder, Johnson had made a report with the Guelph police. He reported that some luggage had been stolen out of his car. The police thought it was a good idea to interview Johnson. A few minutes after entering the interrogation room, he confessed to the 3 murders. He said that he would scale buildings and look for single women. In some cases, he climbed 15 stories. He would get into the apartment and he would attack them. But those weren't the only attacks he committed. He admitted that he broke into the apartments of 10 other women and attacked them. They had all survived. He had also murdered 4 women before committing the 3 murders that the police were investigating. 20-year-old Mary Hicks lived in a ground floor apartment in London. On the morning of April 19, 1972, Hicks was found dead in her bed. A pillow was partially covering her face. The medical examiner believed she had died from suffocation caused by a reaction to prescription drugs. There were no signs of a break-in, so the police didn't believe she was a victim of foul play. Johnson said he had smothered her to death with a pillow. On November 30th, 1973, 42-year-old Alice Ralston was found dead in her apartment in Guelph. Her death was labeled natural. The medical examiner thought she had died from hardened arteries. Johnson had also killed her by smothering her with a pillow. About 4 months later, on March 4th, 1974, 27-year-old Eleanor Hartwig was found dead in her London apartment. There was some bruising and bleeding around the mouth and anus, but the medical examiner thought that the cause of death was due to drugs. On August 8, 1974, 49-year-old Doris Brown was found dead in her bed. The mother of 5 lived alone in an apartment in Guelph. Like the first 2 victims, Johnson had smothered them to death. Even though Russell Johnson confessed to murdering 7 women in 5 years, he was only charged with the murders of Diane Beats, Luella George, and Donna Veldboom. He went to trial for the 3 murders in January 1978. The trial lasted 5 days, and the jury deliberated for 2 hours. He was found not guilty by reason of insanity. He was committed to the Waypoint Centre for Mental Health Care in Penetanguishene, Ontario. Since being hospitalized, he has been chemically castrated, and he takes drugs to lower his testosterone. He annually applies to have the restrictions surrounding his hospitalization made more lenient. The families of the victims have actively fought against any leniency. At the time of this recording, 75-year-old Russell, the bedroom strangler Johnson, is still hospitalized at the Waypoint Centre for Mental Health Care. Number 1. Clifford Olson. On November 19, 1980, 12-year-old Christine Weller was reported missing from the Surrey, British Columbia motel where her family was living. She had ridden off on a borrowed bike from a friend's home 2 days earlier. Previously, Christine had stayed at her friend's homes for days without telling her parents where she was. So her parents weren't too concerned when they hadn't seen her in 2 days. The police didn't take her disappearance too seriously. Sadly, Christine's body was found about 5 weeks later on Christmas Day. It was found by a man walking his dog near the Fraser River in Richmond, a city west of Surrey. She had been stabbed 19 times. Weeks later, the borrowed bike she had been riding was found near the King George Highway in Surrey in a bush. On April 16, 1981, 13-year-old Colleen Daignaud visited her friend in North Delta, British Columbia. North Delta is a town a few miles southwest of Surrey. Tragically, Colleen never made it home. Once again, the police did not take the disappearance seriously. They thought she had run away. On April 21, 1981, less than a week after Colleen went missing, 16-year-old Darren John Roods was visiting Coquitlam, British Columbia from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. Coquitlam is about 10 miles north of Surrey, where Christine Weller lived. On April 21st, Darren went to a shopping center to buy some cigarettes. He was never seen or heard from again. His body was found about a week and a half later on May 2, 1981, near Mission, British Columbia, about 25 miles southeast of Coquitlam. He had been struck several times in the head with a hammer. Over 2 weeks later, on May 19, 1981, 16-year-old Sandra Lynn Wolfsteiner was hitchhiking along the Fraser Highway. She was last seen getting into a gray vehicle with 2 doors. Just over a month later, on June 21st, 1981, 13-year-old Ada Anita Court babysat her nieces in Coquitlam. When her brother came home, Ada went to catch the bus in front of his apartment building. Ada never made it home. A couple weeks after Ada went missing, on July 2, 1981, 9-year-old Simon Partington, who lived in Surrey, left his family's home on his bike to visit a friend. He was supposed to be home by dinner, but he never returned home. Simon's mother called his friend's house to see if he was still there. She learned that her son never made it to the friend's house. Simon's bike was found near the Cedar Hills shopping center the next day. His father posted a $1,000 reward for any information. A witness said she saw Simon walking with his bike while talking to a blond man. On July 9th, just a week after Simon's disappearance, Judy Kozma, 14, went to visit a friend in Richmond, British Columbia. Like Simon, Judy did not make it to her friend's home. The last time anyone saw her, she was waiting for the bus. Judy always carried a phone book with her friends' phone numbers, addresses, and photos. After she disappeared, her friends reported getting strange phone calls with someone breathing heavily on the other end. On one occasion, the caller threatened a friend, saying that she and her friends would be next. On July 23rd, 15-year-old Raymond King Jr. went to the Manpower Youth Employment Office in New Westminster, British Columbia. He told his father he wanted to see if there were any job openings. After locking up his bike, Raymond was seen walking south toward the employment office. But he never made it there. That summer, Sigrid Charlotte Elizabeth Arden, 18, was visiting Canada. She was on a 9-person tour from Germany. After the tour concluded on July 24th, she was supposed to visit her aunt in Coquitlam, but she did not make it to her aunt's home, and she was never seen again. The next day, July 25th, 14-year-old Judy Kozma's body was found near Weaver Lake. She had been missing since July 9th. She had been stabbed 19 times. On July 30th, 17-year-old Louise Marie Chartrand visited her sister in Maple Ridge, British Columbia. She left at around 6:30 p.m. to go see some friends before her waitressing shift at a bar that night in Whistler, British Columbia. Louise hitchhiked some of the way there, but she never made it to the bar. Louise was the 10th young person to go missing or was murdered in the area. People in that area of British Columbia were panicking. So after Louise went missing, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or the RCMP, started a task force. But young people kept disappearing. On July 27th, Terry Lynn Carson, 15, was last seen at her Surrey home. She lived with her family in the same motel as Christine Weller, the first young person to go missing. Terry was last seen at a motel drinking beer on August 1st. Initially, she was classified as a runaway. However, she was now the 11th young person to go missing over the last few months. So the police thought that she might have been the victim of the same killer. Then, on August 6th, Raymond King's body was found in the Weaver Lake area by the RCMP. His body was feet from where Judy Kozma's body had been found 11 days earlier. Raymond had been beaten to death. Then finally, the police got a break in the case. On August 13, 1981, the police arrested 41-year-old construction worker Clifford Olson after he picked up 2 hitchhikers. He was arrested for attempted abduction of the hitchhikers. Olson was born in Vancouver, British Columbia on New Year's Day 1940. He was one of 4 children, and the family lived in Richmond. In elementary school, Olson was a bully and a petty thief. He also tortured animals. At school, he would get into fights, and often he lost. He then learned to box and then beat up the boys who had previously beaten him up. Olson didn't take school seriously and didn't attend often. He dropped out without finishing the 8th grade. When he was 17, he was sent to prison for breaking and entering. This was the start of Olson's problems with the law. Over the next 25 years, Olson spent 21 years in prison. He was convicted of 90 different crimes. He was also a problem when he was in custody. He managed to escape 7 times. Clifford Olson was released from prison on September 7, 1980. Just over a month later, 12-year-old Christine Weller went missing. In February 1980, Olson met a woman named Joan Hale, and they started dating. On May 15, 1981, they were married. A month later, Joan gave birth to a son named Clifford III. After Olson was arrested for the attempted kidnapping, the police searched his van. They found Judy Kozma's phone book in his vehicle. He was subsequently charged with the murder of Judy. While Olson was in custody, more bodies were found. On August 26, 17-year-old Louise Sartran's body was found in the Whistler area. She had been beaten to death with a hammer. 9-year-old Simon Partington's nude body was found on August 26 in a cranberry bog. It was not far from where Christine Weller's body was found 8 months earlier. Simon had been strangled to death. The same day, the body of 15-year-old Terry Lynn Carson was found in a wooded area along the Fraser River. She had been strangled to death. The next day, 18-year-old Sigrid Nairn's body was found near the same cranberry bog where Simon's body was found. She had been beaten to death with a hammer. On August 29th, Ada Court's skull and her upper jawbone were found near Weaver Lake. The cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head caused by a hammer. On September 17th, the remains of 13-year-old Colleen Dignot, the second young person to go missing, were found. She had been missing for about 5 months. She had been bludgeoned to death. Olson was subsequently charged with 9 more murders. He was not charged with the murder of 16-year-old Sandra Wolfsteiner. Clifford Olson's trial started on January 11, 1982. But then, 3 days into the trial, something shocking happened. Olson changed his pleas to guilty. He also pleaded guilty to the 11th murder, which he had not been on trial for. Olson was sentenced to 11 concurrent life sentences, so he would be eligible for parole after 25 years. Then, the next day, more shocking news came out. It turned out that Olson had made a deal with the RCMP. In exchange for $10,000 per victim to be paid in trust to his wife and son, Olson would plead guilty and lead the RCMP to the bodies that had not been found. He pleaded guilty to the 11th murder as a freebie. The infamous bodies for cash deal angered many Canadians. Inquiries were held, and the results only made people more angry. Olson made it clear that he was only concerned with money, and he did not care about helping the grieving families. He was quoted as saying, "If I gave a shit about the parents, I wouldn't have killed the kid." Also, the money could not be taken back from Olson's family. Clifford Olson was able to apply for parole after 15 years under the Faint Hope Clause. He was denied parole. He applied for parole again in July 2006 after serving 25 years. He was denied once again. Then in March 2010, Olson made headlines again. It turned out they had been receiving federal benefits while in prison. Every month, the federal government was paying him $1,169.49. In June 2010, the government ended the benefit payments to Olson. Olson applied for parole again in November 2010, and he was denied parole once more. Clifford Olson, known as the Beast of British Columbia, died from cancer on September 30th, 2011. He was 71 years old. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Please don't forget to check out our new channel, Paranormally Listed. There's a link on the screen now, and there's a link in the description box below this video. Well, that's all for today. Thanks again for watching.